Hello and good morning.
Morning. What's going on?
Do you have the 6-month supply of bread and milk ready for the impending doom of the total and utter whiteout conditions?
Oh, I think we're going to be good. The fridge is stocked right now.
Okay.
The pantry's looking good.
Ready
We're
to
all
go?
set.
Ready to
But
go?
this is a tough part of the country. This is no big deal.
Right.
Stop it.
Yeah, I agree with you. You guys play in New York?
Yes, on Monday.
Monday?
Yeah, last game against the Rangers. So that'll be interesting. I haven't heard exactly, because we're still a ways out, how the Bruins are going to travel in on Sunday. And then they're scheduled to play on Monday at Madison Square Garden and then supposed to travel back home. That's the front end of a back-to-back. We're going to see the Nashville Predators here on Tuesday.
Hard one, though, tonight when it comes to Vegas. But you guys are both coming off tough losses. So how do they match up?
Well, first of all, I think this week in general, Courtney, is a difficult one for the Bruins. And, heading into the game in Dallas, the Bruins had won 6 straight. They were feeling good about their game. They should have. They defended well. They had stayed out of the box, something they didn't do in Dallas. They had gotten a lot of buy-in. They'd shown some resolve. They came from 2 down in Chicago to win. But now you're really stepping up in class here this week. You got the Dallas Stars. You're going to see Vegas, and then it's going to end on Saturday against the Montreal Canadiens. That's a huge divisional game for the Bruins. But tonight will be a difficult test because with Vegas in town, you've got some elite offensive talent in Mark Stone, Jack Eichel, Mitch Marner's going to be there. I believe Rasmus Andersson, who they just acquired from the Calgary Flames, should be in the lineup. The only thing that could help the Bruins is if they're able to rebound from the game against Dallas, generate a little forecheck, generate some zone time. Vegas has had some issues in net this season. If you can make them defend, maybe that will work in the Bruins' favor.
After the blowout on Tuesday, Marco Sturm said they were still playing cute right to the end, the Bruins, and you can't win that way. Is that what you're seeing?
Well, no, I think from start to finish, But the other thing that Marco had said is the first 10 or 15 minutes of the game, the Bruins were in a decent spot. That was a scoreless game. And part of the issue that we've seen with the Bruins this season, and it went away during that 6-game winning streak, is that they started to take preventable minor penalties. And Dallas, even though they had struggled heading into the game, that's a really good power play. If memory serves, they were second best in the National Hockey League, and they cashed in twice in the last 4 minutes of the first period. Jeremy Swayman made some good saves to keep you within range, but then Dallas started to pull away. So that was part of the issue. So hopefully that was a reminder, because the other thing that Marco had mentioned is that that's a team that had gone to the Western Conference Finals 3 consecutive years, and they were able to grind the Bruins at both ends of the ice. And that's the type of game that he wants his team to be able to play moving forward.
How important is it that you don't get back on this roller coaster of what we've seen with the Bruins basically since the season started, of the inconsistency?
They're streaky.
Yeah,
they're streaky both ways.
Right, but how important is that they don't get back on that to kind of drop them further in the standings?
Really big. They head into tonight's contest, Wiggy, with the last wild card spot in the Eastern Conference, and you've got some teams below them in New Jersey, Washington, Ottawa, Toronto, that all made the playoffs last year. And part of the reason that the Bruins, listen, they had a great start to January. They had their 6-game winning streak busted, but as well as they played, they didn't gain much ground because all the teams, even in front of them in the Atlantic Division, they were rolling. So I think for the Bruins, good teams don't have long losing streaks. If you want to give yourself the best shot to make the playoffs, you can't go into one of those roller coaster slides.
Being as streaky as they have been, with the trade deadline a little over a month away, and where there's smoke, there's fire, there's a lot of talk about moving Pavel Zacha.
Well, there was some talk early in the season about moving Zacha.
Seems like it's back now.
That's something that I'm unaware of. I think in general, I was thinking back to some of the comments that the general manager, Don Sweeney, made at the start of the season. And as well as the Bruins have played this year offensively, before the season started, he said, I would probably look to try and add some offense during the course of the season. So that would tell me you're looking for guys in the top 6. I think the Bruins have really liked what they've gotten from a guy like Pavel Zacha, a guy like Elias Lindholm. If you want to move a guy like Zacha, you're getting some really significant pieces. He's under contract for next year at a really nice number.
The attraction is that he's
well, and that may
there's
be
a year left there, and it's not even it's 4 7.5 or it's not even $5 million.
Well, I think for the Bruins, the other thing in the big picture, because I don't know if Rasmus Anderson's name is going to pop up, but I don't see the Bruins being in the rental market. But they've got a lot of assets. They have 2 first-round picks coming up in this year's draft. They have 2 first-round picks coming up in next year's draft. They have some kids who haven't even hit pro hockey that a lot of people like. James Higgins, you got Dean Letourneau, you got Will Zellers, not to mention some of the guys that you have in Providence. So you've got a lot of assets that you can deal with, but what do you want to try and add that can help your team, not just for this year, but I think a little bit longer term?
When you look at this Bruins team, and we talk about how streaky they are, the mindset of front office, do you feel like they want to make a big splash, or does that tend to scare them away because you are so streaky, and if you make this big splash for a certain player, it might not be able to pan out for you because you could go on a 4 or 5 game run losing streak?
I don't know if I necessarily get a sense of that. I think, as teams approach the trade deadline, and I think for 2, you've almost got a soft deadline with the Olympics because you still haven't seen a whole lot of movement. And then there's going to be a roster freeze. And then the real trade deadline will take place after the Olympics and before March. So it'll be interesting to see what moves between now and then, because there are a lot of people in the National Hockey League who believe that a lot of the GMs are waiting to see what kind of injuries, if any, come out of the Olympics. You saw plenty in the Four Nations tournament, so that may impact how some of these GMs will pivot in early March. But I think for the Bruins, listen, just based on last year and some of the moves that the GM Donnie Sweeney made here, those were some bold moves in order to sort of reconfigure the team looking ahead. But I think for most teams who have had a good season, GMs, front offices, they want to reward that group heading into the trade deadline.
And they're moving the Olympic Games over to the MDC rink over here in Watertown. Is that correct? That rink is not.
I can guarantee the ice is better.
They're whispering that it's not going to be done.
I've seen the pictures, and I ran into somebody. We were in Edmonton. I think I ran into Stan Bowman, who's part of the U.S. contingent that's going over to Milan. And I asked him about the rink and the surface. He said, I read what you read. I see what you see. So I think the concern is for a lot of the players, is the ice surface itself going to be safe? I know.
How is that even a question at this point?
Because it's construction delays.
Right.
They started too late.
It's nuts.
But every Olympics it happens. I feel like every city is not. I mean, Boston would have been the biggest disaster of all time. But every one of these cities it happens.
I think the last thing that I'd heard was that they're either going to play the games there or they're not going to play them at all. And everything that I've heard from the NHL Players Association and a little bit from the National Hockey League is that they believe that the games will go off without a hitch. So hopefully the ice is good and nobody gets hurt as a result of the surface.
It better be good. That John Hamm commercial is pretty good, talking to the U.S. team.
It is good.
It's a good commercial.
I think a lot of those guys, Courtney, they're fired up to go. This is something that hasn't happened since, 2014, a best-on-best Olympic tournament. So I think it's going to be some terrific hockey.
Have you seen the trailer, the Netflix trailer for their Miracle 1980 team documentary, which is coming?
No.
I have not.
I saw somebody talk to Mike Eruzione about it, and he said it was the best thing he's ever seen done.
Wow.
About it, and I think
the pride of Pembroke.
I think it drops next Friday or whatever, but it looks really, really,
that's interesting.
Really, really good. We talked a little bit yesterday on the show about Linus Ullmark and that interview that he did. Did you?
I didn't see the full interview, but it sounds like he talked very openly about his struggles with mental health.
Yeah, it was really moving the way in which he explained what he's been going through, and he talked about it starting his mental health struggles starting when he was traded away, and I'm wondering if that was because goalies it's doing that job is so it's a mental thing for them, and I'm just wondering if you had you heard anything about that being an issue for him? He went into it a little bit and said, talked about his feelings about the fact that, I just wonder if, speculating,
Right.
if they went with Jeremy Swayman, they gave Jeremy Swayman the money in the long-term deal, and if that can lead to a confidence issue for a goaltender.
I don't know. I haven't had those conversations with Allmark in the past. I think when he was here in Boston and we had a chance to shoot the breeze, and I also had a chance to shoot the breeze with him when the Bruins were in Ottawa earlier this year. This is a very smart guy. He's a very thoughtful guy, but I had no idea that he was dealing with some of those issues. If I had to guess why the Bruins opted to go with Jeremy Swayman over Linus Ullmark, I think a lot of it would have to do with the way that Swayman played in the playoffs. He was fabulous in that Toronto series. He was terrific against Florida in that second round, also a younger goaltender. So I think that they decided, hey, we've got to go in one direction or the other. And while Linus Ullmark, listen, he won the Vezina Trophy with the Bruins back in 2023. I think they decided we've got to pick one of these guys, and they chose Swayman as a result. But I had no idea exactly the depth of what Linus Ullmark was going through.
Which is interesting because, remember, one of the big things that we always would kind of make fun of in a positive way, where he said he had a mind of a goldfish, right? Where you kind of tend to, like,
and
have
to have that and try to put it, but
right.
What happened behind you.
Right. Yeah, because in football, the closest position to that is probably, like in Ty Law will tell you, is a defensive back. You get beat on a touchdown, you have to have a quick thought process. What do you think, staying on this position is kind of how Swayman has performed, this year? Where would you say, you look at his performance, you look at him mentally, how would you give him a grade?
I think he's been excellent this year for the Bruins. I think as a team, and I have to check the numbers here today, I think he and Jonas Korpisalo have combined for the 10th best save percentage in the league. And if I look at the analytics, and it's been a while to see the current numbers, the Bruins have given up some of the most high-danger chances of all the teams in the 32-team National Hockey League. So the goaltending and a guy like Swayman, who's been your number one guy, they've been excellent. I had a conversation with Swayman early in the season, and he knew that this was a big year considering the way that last year played out for him and the way he's played, and putting the Bruins in the mix in the Eastern Conference as a possible playoff team. I think he deserves a lot of credit for his mental toughness.
When you talk about the trade deadline, I know that you kind of touched on it a little bit, but do you read into any moves that the Bruins have done, whether it's the 2-year extension for Steves, other extensions that they've done? Do you look at that money when you look towards the trade deadline, or not at all?
Not necessarily. I think you're mentioning Jonathan Asbro, who came in, and listen, he's been a pleasant surprise. I think Marco Sturm talked the other day that whether he's played with Nikita Zadorov or he's been playing recently here with Charlie McAvoy, they feel safe playing with a guy like that. He's reliable. He's predictable. He's played hard. He's been a good fit for the Bruins system. I think in the bigger term, I don't see those signings as impacting the Bruins here down the stretch. They're in a good position as far as the assets they have and some of the things that they want to add. I think what has to be identified around the league, and that's the other thing when we talk about the trade deadline, it's not only what do the buyers want, but who are the teams that are definitely sellers in the National Hockey League? We mentioned teams like Washington and Ottawa, and Toronto's obviously not going to be a seller, but there are some teams that I think that have some playoff aspirations that haven't given up on them yet.
Some on this show, like Scheim, are loath to give any credit to Donnie Sweeney, but Courtney brought up Steves. That works out, and he's an everyday player at whatever you got him at.
Add Jonathan Asbro in there.
1.5, yes. And very physical. Like Steves, I think that's a big part of it, is that kind of that physicality that he's brought to this team. But that works out. That's a gold star for Donnie Sweeney.
You can go further back with some of the ads he made. We haven't mentioned a guy like Fraser Minton, who's top 5 among National Hockey League rookies in goals scored. I believe he's well within the top 10 in points scored. I think he leads all rookies in plus minus. This guy has been a very reliable piece anchoring your third line. That was a huge ad. Not only did you get him, and Brandon Carlo I really like, you got him and a first-round pick from Toronto in that deal.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will be watching you tonight. We have a roadshow pregame out at Wachusett Mountain, so we will be watching. And Godspeed when it comes to Snowmageddon 2026.
Nice. And by the way, I know there were some people from the Bruins. I think their kids headed out to Wachusett the other day. They said the conditions were terrific.
Yeah, no, can't wait. Wiggy's going to be boarding like a madman.
No.
Yeah, bring it on.
I stay off those slopes. I tried it one time, and the one time is all I needed.
Okay.
How about some skis? Snowboarding's hard.
No, I did the skiing thing one
tried
time.
it once.
Yeah, I'm not
That was
good
at Loon, I think, the first snow show.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really a mountain. It was like
it was a disaster.
I'm not.
It was
Listen,
a bump.
I've heard too many horror stories.
Yeah.
Whether it was